What's up, YouTube? News here. Now, since I just talked about my top 10 best movies of 2011, not everything in 2011 I thought turned. So here are my top 10 worst movies that got released in 2011. And boy, these were stinkers right here. Alright, I and before I begin, no, Jack and Jill and Bucky Lawson are not in this list, by the way. I know so many people are going to, if before I even go on with this video, I know people are gonna be like, "Hey, where's Bucky Lawson? Where's Jack and Jill?" For one, I love Bucky Lawson. I don't care what anyone says. Bucky Lawson cracked me up, and Jack and Jill's more of a guilty pleasure of mine. Like there are some funny moments in that made me sort of appreciate it. But these are the ones I find should be even worse than these. Yes, there were movies in 2011 I felt worse than Jack and Jill. So, with that being said, here are my top 10 lists. Number 10, I'm gonna go with The Ward. Now, The Ward was actually the last movie that John Carpenter directed. Of course, it's directed behind classic horror films like Halloween, uh, The Thing, and all. But he really stumbled with The Ward. Now, The Ward had a really good cast. You had like Amber Heard, who I know the cool thing is now that you hate on Amber Heard and everything. I don't hate this movie because Amber Heard is in it. I mean, Amber Heard actually, despite everything going on with Amber Heard, I actually quite like some of the stuff that she's been in. But The Ward is not one of them. You also had like Mamie Gummer, who's actually the daughter of Meryl Streep, Danielle Panabaker from The Flash fame, Lindsay Fosaska from Kick-Ass fame, Jared Harris was in this. And the movie took place in 1966 and the chronicles a young woman who is institutionalized after setting fire to her house and who finds herself haunted by ghosts of a former inmate at the psychiatric ward. Yeah, this movie is terrible. I mean, it was not scary at all. And this was it's a shame that this was actually John Carpenter's last movie. Just in general, I love to see John Carpenter come back and direct something better. But yeah, it's a shame that they decided to end his directing career with this piece of garbage. It was not scary. The acting wasn't great. I mean, the script was terrible. Best part about it is, of course, the score by Carpenter. Because come on, John Carpenter's score is always great. But yeah, this movie is not a great film at all, and yeah, pretty terrible. All right, coming in at number 9, I'm gonna go with a film called Sanctum. Now, this is an Australian set horror film, and like here's what the film's about. Though the South Pacific's Asa Ella case are some of the least accessible on Earth, expert divers Frank McGuire, played by Richard Roxburgh, had his them from Mars, and of course, on one each expedition, Frank is joined by his teen son Josh, played by Reese Wakefield, who of course will go on to play the villain in The Purge. And of course, you have financer Carl Hurley, played by Mr. Fantastic himself, Ian Griffin. And like when a flash flood cuts off their exit, they are caught up in a life or death situation here. And yeah, it's safe to say this movie is terrible. It's not scary at all. I mean, I do love a good underwater film, like horror film, whether you talk about The Abyss, or maybe, I don't know, what's some other good underwater horror films? Maybe Deep Blue Sea, I guess, or Open Water, but this is just not so great at all. It's just completely boring. The performances aren't great. I mean, it's a shame too because I like Ian Griffith. Reese Wakefield, I think, is a really good actor, but this movie's not great at all. All right, number 8 is another horror film, and that is 11-11-11. Now, this is directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, who gave us some of the Saw movies, most recent Spiral. He gave us Reaper the Genetic Opera. But to me, this is probably the worst movie he's ever done. And it's where, like, after Joseph Crone travels to Barcelona, after the tragic death of his wife, and the purpose of the trip is to be reunited with his dying father and brother Samuel Tormented by strange events, Joseph becomes obsessed with the number 11, hence the title 11, 11, 11. And I remember this movie actually came out like in November because, well, 11. It actually came out on 11, 11, 11, believe it or not. That was like the most weirdest release date I've ever heard. But I, of course, didn't really watch this in theaters because it wasn't playing anywhere in anybody. But I saw it, I believe, Chiller one time. I'm glad I did not see this in theaters. It is so bad. The performances are terrible. It's not all that scary. It has some. It's very predictable at times. This is a horrible horror film and maybe one of the worst horror movies in the past number of years. So yeah. All right. Coming in at number 7, I'm gonna go with The Right. Now this does star Anthony Hopkins. Uh, and it's directed by Michael Havstrom, I think his name is, and it's based on like actual events as a witness and recounts by American then exorcist in training Father Greg Thomas and his experiences of being sent to Rome to be trained and work daily with veteran clergy of the practice. And this is a terrible horror film. I mean, I don't mind exorcism film. Like Pope's Exorcist was terrible, but I would say this is even worse than Pope's Exorcist. You know, Anthony Hopkins definitely gave not a great performance here at all. You also had Colin O. I forgot his name. Colin O. Something. X Force, I think his name is. Um, yeah, the performances in this isn't all that great. It's not that scary. It's completely boring, and yeah, I was not a fan of that at all. All right, number 6, I'm gonna go with The Three Musketeers, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, the director behind the Resident Evil movies. Of course, based on the very classic novel by Alexander Dumas. You of course had Ray Stevenson, Matthew McFadden. Of course, Matthew McFadden will go on to star in Succession, so there's that. Logan Lerman is in this, Mila Jovovich, Christoph Waltz, Orlando Bloom, Matt Mixon, Luke Evans. You had some great cast members in this. But this was a dumpster fire. We've seen some really interesting adaptations of the Three Musketeers, whether you talk about the one with Charlie Sheen in it. There's been some other really good ones over the years. But this is one of the worst adaptations. It's not all that great. The chemistry between the characters are not great. It's completely boring. I mean, this movie is just not a great film at all. And, definitely one of the parts of Paul W.S. Anderson's worst movies he's ever done. So, yeah, shows how Jimmy Paul W.S. Anderson could be a hit and miss, but this is one of his misses. All right, number 5, I'm gonna go with Priest, another Paul Bettany movie in my list, by the way, in my worst list. This and Paul Bet, and of course in this, because if you guys don't know, Legion was in my top 10 worst movies of 2010 when I made that vid. So yeah, not the best year should be Paul Bettany here, but anyway. Now, of course, you have Paul Bettany who plays a child character, and it's based on the Korean comic of the same name by Hyung Min Woo. And here again, it does take place in like an alternate universe where humanity and vampires have pretty much warred for centuries. And after the last vampire war, a veteran warrior priest lives in the obscurity until his niece, played by Lily Collins, is kidnapped by vampires. You also had the likes of Carl Urban was in this, Brad, Chucky himself, Brad Dourif. Maggie Hugh was also in this. You also had Cam Gajante from Twilight fame, Christopher Plummer, Stephen Moore, some great cast members. But yeah, this movie is just not all that good. It's also pretty boring. The performances isn't great. Paul Bettany does his best, I guess, but even his performance this isn't great. I mean, you got Maggie Q, who I've always had a crush on Maggie Q, but even she wasn't enough to save this film, and yeah, not a good film at all. All right. Coming in at number 4, I'm of course gonna go with Apollo 18. Now, this is pretty much, I guess you could say, 2001 Space Odyssey meets Paranormal Activity. Apollo 18 is of course a 2011 film directed by Gonzalo's Lopez Gallego. I think that's his name. And it is a premise that is and its premise is that the canceled Apollo 18 mission actually landed on the moon in December 1974, but never returned. And as a result, the U.S. has never launched another expedition to the moon. And the film is a found footage style, supposedly lost footage of Apollo 18 mission. And yeah, this was so plain terrible. It was not all that scary. The performances is pretty terrible. Uh, this thing had no idea what it wanted to be. Did it want to be a sci-fi film? Did it want to be a horror? The script is terrible. I mean, this is one of the worst found footage movies I've ever seen. Like, the Paranormal Activity movies are much better than this, but yeah, that's just me, of course. All right. Coming in at all right, coming in at number three. I'm just gonna go say it. Green Lantern. Yes, Green Lantern. Most people probably have this as their number one worst, but my top two I think are the worst. But Green Lantern is pretty bad. I mean, yeah, of course you had Ryan Reynolds, who of course go on to play Deadpool. And of course I really love how in the Deadpool movies there's always Green Lantern references, like the one line where he says, "Don't make the super suit green or animated." I mean, this movie is so bad. Like even Ryan Reynolds disliked it. Like there was like a scene where where he was actually shooting this movie and he was reading Deadpool comics while he was shooting a DC film. So yeah, and of course the end credit scene went nowhere. I mean, this movie is completely terrible. It's the script is terrible. Ryan Reynolds. I love Ryan Reynolds, but even he really wasn't enough to say this film. Of course, you had Blake Lively. I mean, this movie did something good. I mean, it pretty much introduced us to Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively being a couple. So there's that. But yeah, of course, you had Mark Strong. You had Tim Robbins. Angela Bassett, of course, was in this. Of course, she would go on to appear in Black Panther. So at least she has a good comic book films in her sleeve. But yeah, Green Lantern is a really plain bad film, and the effects are terrible. The performances aren't great. I mean, I admit Ryan. Okay, I take that back. Ryan Reynolds was a good Green Lantern, but just the movie itself wasn't all that good. But it is what it is. Anyway, coming in at number two, I'm gonna go with Red Riding Hood. Now, this movie is of course directed by Catherine Hardwicke, who of course gave us Twilight, 13. This might be her worst movie, in my opinion. Red Riding Hood was, of course, a dark tale on the folk tale Little Red Riding Hood. And of course, you have Amanda Seyfried in this playing the Tyro with Gary Oldman, Billy Burke, Charlotte Fernandez, Virginia Madsen, Julie Christie, Lucas Haas. You had some good supporting performances in this, but the movie is just completely terrible. It's not all that scary at all. Uh, the fantasy aspect is terrible. The CGI stuff with the wolves is pretty bad. Amanda Seyfried also did another movie. Oh no, no. Yeah, some of Amanda Seyfried's movies in the past number of years wasn't all that great, and this was one of them. And the year after, she also did that movie Gone, which, yeah, I'm glad to see her getting better roles now. But yeah, this here was definitely not a good one at all. And yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, all right, my number one worst movie of 2011 is none other than Season of the Witch. Of course, starring Nicolas Cage, directed by Dominic Sena, who, of course, directed Cage in Gone in 60 Seconds. You also had Nicolas Cage, Ron Perlman, Claire Foy, and in it, you have Cage and Perlman, who stars as these knights who returned from crusades to find their homeland devastated by the Black Death, and two church elders accuse a young woman played by Claire Foy of being a witch responsible for the purge. And so they command like the two knights who to transport her to like a distant monastery to so the monks can also lift for curse here. And yeah, this is one of the most boringest films I ever witnessed back then. The performances is great. It's not all that good at all. The script is plain bad. I mean, this movie got released back in January 2011, and so that says something about it. I believe this was actually the first movie released in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. So there's that. I mean, yeah, I remember I watched this one in theaters. I was like, what the heck is Nicolas Cage doing, man? He definitely does not fit this role at all. Uh, because of course Nicolas Cage is doing better stuff now. Like, Renfield's pretty good. And Barrow Wait Master Town was pretty good. Pig. But of course, there was a time when Nicolas Cage has actually stumbled into these territories, and Season of the Witch was one of them. And yeah, this was a Jimmy. This is worse than Jack and Jill. I'm sorry. I prefer Jack and Jill over Season of the Witch. There, I said it. I prefer a movie where Adam Sandler is a female rather than a fantasy movie with Nicolas Cage taking out witches. There, I said it. But yeah, it is what it is, I guess. I say just skip Season of the Witch and just I'll listen to the witch music. But that's just me. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Of course, here is my quick rundown. All right, 10 The Ward, 9 Sanctum, 8 11 11 11, 7 The Bright, 6 The Three Musketeers, 5 Priest, 4 Apollo 18, 3 Green Lantern, 2 Red Riding Hood, and number 1 is of course Season of the Witch. Now there are some other pretty blatant bad films that got released that year as well. Let me post first movies 2011. All right, Ghost Rider: Spirits of Vengeance came out like the year after, so that I guess Transformers Dark of the Moon wasn't all that great, but I didn't mind that as much. There's of course that abduction movie with Taylor Lautner, which I didn't mind so much, but Cars 2, maybe I probably could have had that one. To me, that's actually Pixar's worst film in my opinion. Let's see. I enjoyed The Roommate. I don't care what anyone says. Beneath the Darkness. Uh, Hoodwick 2 was pretty terrible. I enjoyed Zookeeper. I don't care what anyone says. I don't know how she does it with Sarah Jessica Parker. That was pretty bad. Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 1. I did not mind it as much. 360 was a pretty bad one. Spy Kids 4 wasn't all that great. Let's see what else we got here. I did not mind Conan the Barbarian remake. Human Centipede 2 I could have added. I mean, there's some other really pretty bad ones. But let me let you guys. What do you think were some of the worst movies of 2011? I know what lots of people are gonna say. Comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell for notification. This is Himi signing out.